Колеги, всім доброго ранку. Я рада представити Ребекку Хармс, президента партії Зелених в Європейському of the Party of Greens in the European Parliament. Without any further ado, Ms. Harms, please.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you again for inviting me, for giving me the opportunity to address some journalists working today in Kiev. I left the YES conference, the annual conference of the YES Foundation, to speak a little bit also outside of the context of this very interesting conference in this year, because it's interesting to see how international representatives from politics, economy, and civil society are discussing on the issue of ongoing conflict, or you can also call it war, which takes place in Ukraine. I want to be very brief in my introduction, and I will give you the opportunity for questions, because I think the issues we have to discuss are not really new, and I have also not that many news, but maybe a kind of a different perspective for a member of the European Parliament, especially from Germany. I think in the European Union we are still missing a clear and common analysis about what's going on in the east of Ukraine. So even after in Russia they admitted that Russian soldiers are on the ground in Donbass, even after they admitted this in Russia, in the EU and in some member states, there is still a kind of refusal to acknowledge that a war is going on the territory in Ukraine, And what is behind this refusal might be interesting. For me, behind is that, so if Europeans admit that this war is not a war against Ukraine, but taking place on the territory of Ukraine, targeting on European values and European strategies, then the setting of negotiations of sanctions would be complete different. So it's really the case, I'm convinced, that becoming honest on evaluating the situation is a better fundament for adequate responses. This morning I was again and again listening to speeches in which different speakers said we. So the speakers, the EU, the international community, it was a little bit open. We, who is behind this we do not we do not see a military solution for the conflict in Ukraine or the war in Ukraine. It depends a little bit about who on who speaks, whether they speak about the war or not. Yeah? But again and again I heard people saying that there is no military solution for this conflict. My wording is a little bit different when I'm talking in Europe about the situation. I admit that I do not want a military solution, but I see that Russia wants a military solution and obviously is close to get a military solution. Also on this, I would prefer a more honest, a more adequate wording among the European politicians, because this would help us to face the adequate sanctions or other things required. On the sanctions, you can ask me everything. I think you know the state of the preparations and the last decisions in Europe. I find another debate even more important. This is the discussion on solidarity, not only with Ukraine, but in the European member states and those European countries who want to be associated and closer or in the European Union in the future. I think altogether we have to get ready for the winter. I'm very, very experienced in the energy debate. I saw all crisis developments through the last decade. And my impression is that the most urgent issue to be tackled is energy security in all countries, including Ukraine, for the next winter. And the winter is close, and the preparations are, from my point of view, so far very weak. So solidarity, especially in the context of energy supply, would create immediately a better fundament also for all the sanctions which have been discussed so far. So these are maybe poor contributions to the situation, but for me, they should be in the focus of the discussions. What I liked yesterday evening in the opening session of the YES conference, and what I also liked this morning, were all the contributions focusing on the need for progress in developing better governance and better regulation reforms in Ukraine. I know that the ongoing war in east of Ukraine, which is not the mistake by Ukrainians, that this war is in contradiction with the need for reforms and better governance. But I'm convinced that we really should focus also on this, not going into the trap of Russian escalation only in the East, because Russia's interest is distortion of the reform process, the democratic development in Ukraine. Therefore, the West also has to concentrate together with all those in Ukraine who want the reforms on this reform process. We can win this battle which has been opened by Russia against European values and European strategies. We can win it also by winning reforms in Ukraine.
Thank you so much, Ms. Harms. We at Ukraine Crisis Media Center and in Ukraine very much appreciate your very much straightforward inputs on the situation, on the position that the EU takes, and specifically on your role, on your part in the European Parliament to deliver the position that Ukraine needs. Do we have questions? Yes, we have.
Oksana Melnichuk,
Ukraine Crisis Media Center. I join the words of my colleague, but I have a question, quite a tough question, to European Parliament in your face, if I may. Europe always says that Europe doesn't want a war. Europe doesn't see the military solution of this crisis in Ukraine, but somehow Ukraine allows France to sell Mistrals to Russia, Mistral ships. Can Europe clear tough position? And I appeal to you as a representative from the Greens party, because this is the party who could take this issue under its own control, that we cannot even speak about it, about any cooperation, military cooperation with Russia under these circumstances, and also in the future, because it's clear for everyone aggressive Hitler's position of Putin. That's why when French President says, namely, we'd postpone selling Mistrals, but tomorrow, it's a new information which has shocked us. Tomorrow, Mistral Vladivostok, which is in Saint-Nazaire, leaves to the open sea to tests. And on the board, there are 400 Russian sailors. I believe this is such a disrespect to Ukraine that all the rest of the statements on the highest European level just disappear. They seem like nothing. So this European cynicism, we have to finish, somehow tackle with this. And this is a request and also a question. How European Parliament is able to stop such things, such steps against Ukraine? Thank you.
Not to escape, but what I said, that clear, honest interpretation of what takes place in east of Ukraine. So to be clear about that, a war is going on the territory of Ukraine. To be clear on this, is the condition to be against, explicitly against the export of all weapons to Russia. And I think also the French are known for a certain ignorance towards the situation which has developed over the last 2 months. And I can fully understand how much the Ukrainians are provoked by the decision of French President Hollande to continue the preparations of the export of the Mistrals, because the Mistrals are perfect for invasion from the sea. I was the one to make it an issue in the European Parliament already before summer. I failed, so I have not the majority behind me, but we will have another vote in the European Parliament next week, and I hope that in this case the majority will be tough against France. And the Mistrals, I asked French colleagues whether they have dared to think about that invasion from the Azov, from the Sea of Azov, that invasion from there of Odessa or Mariupol, could be much easier with Mistrals than without, and what they would think if their weapons would contribute to further invasion successes in Ukraine. But most of them escape the reality. And to be honest, I think it would be good what Canadians did towards Russia. They distributed a map, where everybody could see the geography and the borders in between Russia and Ukraine, a map, with the cities, the sea, and the possible location of Mistrals could help also the French public to understand the situation.
Колеги, є в нас запитання ще? I have actually a question, if you permit, Ms. Harms. My personal belief and observation is that today European Union does not have a clear strategy, long-term strategy in relation to Russia. We see a lot of efforts, sometimes sporadic efforts, to tackle Russia with sanctions, especially after the Malaysia airplane crash, and now with the full invasion of Russia into Ukraine. But does European Union have a plan to react? Because what we see is numerous breaches of the ceasefire, of this very fragile truce, and we see that there might be some other scenarios development, there might be a worsening of the situation. So is European Union ready to react, and how ready?
So you made a very important point, because many Europeans always during the last month since November, they said Europe had no ideas and no plans for Ukraine. So this is not true. We had well-prepared negotiations, long negotiations for association agreement and also the Eastern Partnership. We made major mistakes in our approach to Russia, because we did not recognize what it meant that Russia more and more escaped ongoing, also long time going negotiations for a better association or treaties with Russia. For example, I followed for several years the plans for an energy union in between Russia and Europe, and I know why it failed. It failed because of Russia. And our biggest mistake in Europe is that we all together did not recognize the change of Russian strategies early enough. And the crisis in Ukraine and now the war in Ukraine shows us also all our black holes towards Russia.
And just last one question maybe from my side. Today I have seen the results that Euro-Observer has published on the support that actually the majority of 52% of European Union citizens support the Ukraine to be a member of the European Union, but still the position of Germany and France is more against. So the report has been published now, but this was made, the observation was made in survey in June. So what do you think, how much we can believe that? How much is really the huge percent that supports or not, and what is the internal movement inside these citizens?
Public opinion is changing often, and so as politicians, we tend to take what fits into our ideology, our program, our actual projects. In this case, I followed the shift in public opinion in Germany and in Europe closely, in the Ukrainian case and possible EU membership. And so in winter, it was the opposite. So before the Russian intervention and before the media offensive or the agitprop offensive of Russian media and Russian social media activists or trolls, it was different. And we have to win it back. I'm very dedicated to this, but so you know better than I know, because here in Ukraine it started the analysis or analyzing the media situation and how Russia's media war has been organized and how early they have prepared it and opened it. And it will be tough to win back the opinion, but it's possible. I'm really convinced because I think Germans are not friends of dictatorship or similar systems. Germans love freedom and democracy, and we will come back with a better opinion for Ukraine.
Thank you so much, Ms. Harms, on this very positive line. Thank you so much for making it up to come here, and I wish you a very fruitful stay in Yalta conference.
One more.
Okay, we have one more follow-up.
Пані Хармс, ще раз дякуємо за.
Once again, I would like to thank you for your position, and also once again, I would like to thank you for your position, for the position of your party in the European Parliament. You are our great hope. Tell me, please, now there are many issues in the world related to those issues which are very close to your activity, like climate issues in the world. Nobody cares nobody cares about ideological ecology of spirit. In the future, maybe your party could raise such issues like ecology of thinking, ecology of mind. I would like to hear this answer from you.
Maybe it's only a first step, but early in autumn, I will bring a delegation of Greens, European Greens from different countries to Kiev. I plan to do it the days before the election, so that in case elections take place, they can contribute also to public attention for the electoral process, maybe also in more difficult cities than Kiev is. And I'm also preparing a bigger conference in Brussels, and this is especially for ecology of minds, on the warfare in the media. I think we have meanwhile a lot of good experts on what happened with the minds of people based on this agitprop propaganda Soviet style. But much more powerful because also of the social media. And if you want to join, if some journalists from Kiev want to join, I will inform the Crisis Center when this conference is going to happen. And I would be really, really happy to have you. And also I can promise that we are taking care of a live stream, so that you see we together work on the ecology, not only of in environmental questions, but also in social questions and mindset questions.
That's perfect. We are looking forward to see you here in Kiev again early in October.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Дякую, колеги. Наш наступний прес-брифінг за 5 хвилин. Thank you so much, Ms. Harms.